And welcome back to Washington Post Live. Mark Maske from the Washington Post remains, and we are pleased to welcome in Mike Richman, who literally wrote the Redskins Encyclopedia. Welcome back to the show. We had you before the book came out, and now the Redskins Encyclopedia is out. It's in hard copy. I mean, it's a tremendous read. There's so much information in there. And, of course, with the Redskins playing the Cowboys this weekend, there's so much to chew on at this point. And it all starts from back when the Cowboys were just trying to get into the league. I mean, this rivalry literally begins before the Cowboys existed.
Well, absolutely. Well, the Redskins owner at the time, George Preston Marshall, didn't want them in the league because he thought that they would steal his fans, part of his southern fan base, because the Redskins at the time played exhibition games as far west as Texas. So Marshall said,
and he was
he
right.
didn't want them.
They stole his fans.
They stole some of everybody's fans.
Yeah. In fact, they'd like you to believe that they stole everybody's fans.
All of everybody's fans.
Well, that's part of the reason why when we had Brian Mitchell on, we were talking about why everyone hates Dallas. Part of it is because that whole the idea of America's team sort of gets under the skin of everybody, including the Redskins.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, you know, and then, but it seems like some of the craziest games in Redskins history have taken place against the Dallas Cowboys.
It just seems that whenever these two teams face each other, not whenever, but very often when they face each other, something very strange happens, as evidenced by some of the games in recent years. The Monday night game, the two long touchdown passes to Santana Moss, when the Redskins' offense looked dead. Prior to that, everybody...
The entire season
everybody
prior to that,
everybody thought the Cowboys were going to win that game easily. The Redskins won that game at the end, and last year with Nick Novat's field goal.
Drew Bledsoe saying that people were text messaging him congratulatory messages before the game was over, just assuming they all went to bed.
A couple of them probably were from T.O., maybe. but, you know, Mike, I mean, we get the sense that a rivalry game kind of overwhelms all the other factors, you know, in terms of who's better that season, who's playing well, who's not playing well. Right now you have the Cowboys as one of the best teams in the league, the Redskins kind of up and down. Does history bear out that this rivalry and these teams playing each other, you know, means you throw all the rest of that out the window?
It seems that no matter what the team's records are, one can upset the other. 1991, the Redskins started 11-0. Who beat them? The Dallas Cowboys. You know, people were talking about the Redskins going undefeated that year.
Or the year that Dallas almost went winless, except for their win at RFK against the Redskins.
Right.
Right, was that 89?
That was 89,
right.
Yes. That was Jimmy Johnson's first year.
Right. Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson coming in and
just
basically
a terrible team.
Throwing everything out to start over and then not being able to beat, but knowing they wouldn't be able to beat anybody, but there was someone that they could beat.
Yeah, and it's kind of coincidence by the schedule making in the NFL that we would have Ohio State, Michigan, and Redskins-Cowboys on the same weekend, because you can draw parallels to both in that very fact that sometimes the team that seems least likely to win comes out with a victory, which of course gives Redskins fans all sorts of hope this weekend. Because people looking at it with, very statistically this weekend would think the Redskins don't have much of a chance. But history would dictate otherwise.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, and maybe, well, the Redskins don't have a rookie quarterback on their bench that could come out of nowhere, come out with a game. I mean, that's one of the all-time great stories in Cowboys-Redskins history.
It just seems that, well, Clint Longley, yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
The Thanksgiving Day game in 1974, he hadn't thrown a pass in his career. And he threw 2 touchdown passes that game, led 3 scoring drives, and as Charlie Thaler told me, the Redskins could smell the turkey, and Longley just
they ended up becoming the turkey.
He spoiled it.
Exactly.
Just sort of happened that way. All right, so with Joe Gibbs coming back into this rivalry, is there anything to take, you know, from Gibbs version 1 that sort of carries over at all at this point? Are there any markings of the rivalry renewed in a way?
Well, the rivalry was definitely evident during the first Gibbs era. Gibbs was very quiet about it, though. He didn't want to antagonize the Cowboys in any way, unlike one of his predecessors, George Allen.
George Allen went the other way on things, right?
George Allen literally hated the Cowboys. He would do whatever he could to get under their skin, and he used one of his defensive linemen, Dyron Talbert, to make inflammatory comments about Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach. He would say, oh, Roger Staubach wears skirts, or Roger Staubach can't read defenses. And as Staubach said, you know, that stuff did affect him.
Yeah, and Gibbs was more in the Landry mode. where he doesn't want anybody really saying too much. He doesn't want to ruffle the feathers.
Sort of stone-faced when it came to to making those types of comments.
You mentioned the way George Allen fueled the rivalry. Have you sensed that has the rivalry been felt with the same intensity from both sides? We know that the intensity and the passion and the dislike on the Redskins side toward the Cowboys. Do you sense that it's the same from the Cowboys towards the Redskins?
I think they sense a rivalry. I think both teams, now that we're in the sort of free agency era, we're in a different time than the 70s and 80s. The rivalry may be felt a little differently among the players, among all of the players, because there's more transition in players going from team to team. So you don't have that stability like you had in the 70s and 80s. But maybe in Dallas, because they feel that so many teams are after them, maybe they don't feel it as much as the Redskins.
You know what? Why don't we go to Dallas, bring in a guy who knows all about this stuff, wrote a book, in fact, about the Dallas Cowboys' greatest era called The Greatest Team Ever, that, of course, being the early 1990s Dallas Cowboys. Norm Hitzges joins us from Dallas, Texas. Norm, first of all, welcome to Washington Post Live. And obviously there's animosity flowing from the D.C. side of things towards Dallas. Is it reciprocal?
I still think if you gauged the #1 arch rival year in year out of the Dallas Cowboys, it would be the Washington Redskins. Many of the things I heard you just talking about inflamed this rivalry for years. In fact, you're talking about the Clint Longley 2 touchdown passes. I remember talking to Blaine Nye, the incredibly thoughtful Cowboys guard who had, like, I think 3 degrees from Stanford, who referred to Longley that day coming in and throwing his first touchdown passes of his career as the triumph of the uncluttered mind. I've always loved that phrase.
It's great.
Hey, Norm, it's Mark Maske from the Washington Post.
Hi, Mark.
You know, obviously the teams that you wrote about were spawned by getting Troy Aikman in there, and then the other elements also along with it. But do you sense it all right now with Romo and with the confidence they've shown in with the big new contract? Do you sense that maybe that the history is repeating itself and the Cowboys are spawning another kind of era with Romo playing Aikman?
Yes, I do. Every great team, the book Greatest Team Ever that I did, studied the 6 dynasties. Those 6 teams had one thing in common: great quarterbacking. Starr, Bradshaw, Greasy, Montana, Aikman, and Brady. And Romo, though he's only a little over a year into his starting career, is a playmaker at quarterback. There's a big difference between playing quarterback and a quarterback making plays. And as the Cowboys have added pieces over the last couple of years, this is a team that really isn't old at any other position besides wide receiver right now. It has very good depth. And remember, it has 2 #1 choices in next year's draft, courtesy of the trade with Cleveland. This is a Cowboy team that's built pretty well for the long run. And I sense that Cowboy fans think that they're close to being back. Now, whether the AFC permits them to come all the way back this year, I don't know. But I think Cowboy fans sense they're back.
Hey, Norm, Mike Richman here, author of the Redskins Encyclopedia.
Yeah, hi, Mike.
I think you would probably agree with me when I say that anything is possible in this rivalry. And going back to the years of 92, 93, and 95, the Cowboys' Super Bowl years, what happened during those seasons? The team split in 92 and 93, and the Redskins beat the Cowboys twice in 95. So
exactly right. And as the Redskins were reigning in the NFL, the team John Madden predicted would go all the way undefeated. Who stunned them that year? It was the Cowboys. You're very right. Anything can happen in this rivalry. My question about this Sunday is, are the Redskins well enough, simply health-wise, to pull an upset?
Well, they have been decimated by injuries, and even this week they lost another receiver in Brandon Lloyd, and so that receiver core is really depleted.
Hey, guys, we're running out of time here, but I want to pose this question to both Norm and Mike. Norm, I'm going to start with you out in Dallas. Do you think the players of today understand the history of the rivalry and even the history of the Dallas Cowboys? Because a lot of them were pretty young back in the early 1990s. And do you think they should be educated in some way when coming to the Cowboys or the Redskins, Mike, about the history of their franchise when they get there?
I don't think they understand it as well because I don't think they live it year to year. The league's become much more of a sort of a vagrant league. People move all around this league, and they don't stay in one place for 8, 9, 10, 12 years these days as they used to. And it was that type of player that made this a rivalry. Now the league very much is a transient league.
Mike, what do you think?
I certainly agree with that. I think back in the 70s and 80s when there was so much roster stability, the players just got to know each other. They knew who they were on the other side of the ball. The Hogs, for instance, the great Redskins offensive line, they knew they were going after Randy White. They were targeting him. They were just out to destroy the Cowboys defensive line because they disliked them.
Norm Hitzges, the book is called The Greatest Team Ever. It chronicles the Cowboys of the early 1990s with 3 Super Bowl championship teams. Norm, thanks so much for coming on Washington Post Live. We loved your insight today.
Anytime. I appreciate it. It's good to talk to you guys again.
All right. Mike Richman, of course, the author of the Redskins Encyclopedia. Good to have you back. It's Dallas week here in D.C., so it's always fun to talk about the Cowboys and Redskins.